Cori Bush went on CNN, and she was actually asked a phenomenal question from the interviewer here, so massive credit. She's basically going to be asked, hey, why doesn't the left use their leverage like the right often does? And her answer is beyond underwhelming.
Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia has essentially, used what seems to be a veto power against a lot of progressive priorities, including some of the ones that you've mentioned. But in the House, Democrats have this 2-seat majority. There are 6 members of the squad, of which you are a part. What's stopping you from flexing that same power for your agenda? You just said you would vote against a compromise on qualified immunity. Are you prepared, and the rest of the squad prepared, to use that kind of veto power that you have if you vote as a bloc?
I'm prepared to do whatever is needed to make sure that that our agenda moves forward. But I can't speak for the rest of the squad members. At the end of the day, my sister Ayanna Pressley says it all the time. You vote alone, and you're voting for your districts. So you're voting for the people who voted you in.
There it is. I've gotten a lot of shit for saying that exact thing in my criticisms of the Justice Democrats. Again, a group which I co-founded. So I know a thing or two about what the idea was, because I was one of the ones who fucking created it. So anyway, I find it hilarious that people who didn't co-create it are telling me that I don't know what I'm talking about when I dissect it and critique them and say, hey, here's what you're doing wrong, here's what you're doing right, so on and so forth. But this is a criticism I've made. That the problem is there's no solidarity, there's no unity, there's no voting together as a bloc, there's no using your leverage. And here, Cori Bush, to her credit, she's being honest, she just comes out and admits it. She said, hey, and by the way, she doesn't even realize it, but she massively throws Ayanna Pressley under the bus here, because Ayanna Pressley is either on purpose or inadvertently doing divide and conquer of the Justice Democrats, of the squad, of the entire left-wing agenda. If she's the one who's functioning as the leader, and by the way, she probably is, because she's been in Congress the longest, and she has a different mindset than a lot of the other ones, Ayanna Pressley says, hey, at the end of the day, you vote alone. At the end of the day, you vote alone. And that effectively functions as divide and conquer and completely undermining the left-wing agenda. When, again, the whole point of the Justice Democrats was to get these people elected, knowing we wouldn't have, the majority of people in Congress or even the majority of people in the Democratic Party at this point in time. You get enough of them elected where they can cause a ruckus, where they can stir the pot, where they can take some hostages and be prepared to shoot some hostages, where you can do exactly what the Tea Party did. You get enough of them in there where they can raise hell, where they can give their party leadership just as much trouble as they give the opposition party trouble. That was the whole idea. But in order to do that, you need solidarity, you need unity, you need a sub-caucus within the Progressive Caucus, because a lot of the so-called progressives in the Progressive Caucus aren't progressive at all, they're total corporate sellouts. So the idea was, hey, let's have like a dozen of these Justice Democrats there, and if you have a 2-seat majority, and you have 12 people who are actually on the left, you can get whatever you want. You can get whatever you want. Or at the very least, you could get like half of what you want if you play hardball. And instead, Cori Bush just admits there, she says, I'm prepared to do whatever's needed to make sure our agenda moves forward. But at the end of the day, you vote alone. That's what Ayanna Pressley tells me all the time. Well, if at the end of the day you vote alone and you're not voting as a bloc, then you guys have no power at all. None. Zero. None. When again, all it would take is a handful of these people having some backbone, having some fight in them, standing together and doing what needs to be done. But listen, I said it before, I'll say it again. At the end of the day, they're wimps. At the end of the day, a lot of these Justice Democrats, they don't want mainstream media to shit on them 24/7 and yell at them and act like they're the problem and say, why are you betraying Pelosi and why are you betraying President Biden? What are you doing? They don't want a negative campaign against them, which would come from the mainstream media. They don't want a negative campaign against them from the leadership of their own party because they're scared. They're scared and they have no fight in them and they have no backbone and they also don't understand the first fucking thing about strategy. And so they take the easy way out. And the easy way out is what? This is really important, guys. This is really important. The easy way out is to virtue signal on Twitter all day about how you're for all the right things, but then when it comes time to fight, do absolutely nothing that would materially move us closer to those things. That's the sad reality. Again, this doesn't give me pleasure to talk about this, guys. This doesn't make me happy to talk about this. Nobody wanted the Justice Democrats to succeed more than me. Nobody. It's the biggest thing I've ever done in my life, co-founding that group. And, it's painful to watch them time and time again fail. Because then, we look at it and we go, what was the point of all that time, all that effort, all that energy, all the campaigning, all the fundraising? What was the point of it if at the end of the day, they don't know what to do with the power that they were just granted? What was the point if you're not going to do it, if you're not going to fight? And this is just an admission. Yeah, we're not going to fight because you vote alone at the end of the day. Well, if that's the operating philosophy that you vote alone and all of you are acting like that, and they are, then you're never going to get anything done ever. So, don't come back crying when you guys are asking for re-election and you're asking for donations and you can't get them anymore. Because those donations, those small dollar donations came from people who put all their hopes into you, that you would actually fight for these things. And, I think those people would even understand if you lost 75% of the fights and only won 25% of the fights. As long as you're fighting, those people would reward you. But when this is what's going on, of course people are going to abandon you because you abandoned them. You abandoned them. And it's even more nefarious that they continue to virtue signal on Twitter all day about how they're for all the right things, and then they do nothing that would actually materially bring about those things. Breaks my heart to hear this. It really does. See, and by the way, the first part of what she said contradicted the second part of what she said. I'm prepared to do whatever is needed to make sure our agenda moves forward. That's the first part. Then the second part is, at the end of the day, you vote alone. Yeah, but if you're prepared to do whatever is needed to make sure the agenda moves forward, that means you and AOC and Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and Ro Khanna and Mark Pocan and Pramila Jayapal and Raul Grahava and all of you would need to be unified. The logic of what we're talking about here is the exact same as the logic of collective bargaining, unionization. Hey, if one of us talks to the employer, we have no power. They have all the power. They could hire me, they could fire me, they could cut my pay, they could cut my benefits, they could do whatever they want. I have no power. I could just be replaced like that. But if all of the workers stand together, now we have power. Because now, nothing's going to get done unless you deal with all of us, unless you bargain with us, unless you negotiate with us. It's the exact same logic when it comes to Congress when you have, at least, by the way, a dozen people who are really on the left, whose ideology is really on the left, who will work with you, who want the same things you want. You have a 2-vote majority in the House, and you have 12 people who nominally agree, but you can't unify, you can't show solidarity, you can't work together, you can't tank some must-pass bills. That's the thing a lot of people don't understand, man. A lot of these bills that they could have held up are literally must-pass bills. There is no option. They have to be passed. And so you get extractions. You get some of the things you want. Are you going to win on everything? No. Are you going to win on a lot? Yes. It's the exact same thing that Joe Manchin has successfully been doing and Kyrsten Sinema has successfully been doing. Those bills reflect their priorities a lot more than the left's priorities. Why? Because they'll say, I'll tank the whole fucking thing if you don't do what I want. And there's more people who actually believe in the left-wing ideas in the House than there are the conservative Democrats in the Senate. So it's just math at this point. You could say to Joe Biden, hey, there's, 6 or 8 people in the Senate who are going to tank the $15 minimum wage. Well, we have 12 in the House who are saying we're not voting for the bill unless you have the minimum wage and the $15 minimum wage in it. So I guess you're going to have to get to work on changing the minds of those 6 people, those 8 people. You better use the carrot and stick approach. You better give them whatever they need in order to vote for it. Or say, if you don't vote for it, I'll make your life a living hell and campaign against you and end your career in the Democratic Party. They're not going to do any of that. And the sad reality is, and you all know this is true. You all know this is true. They didn't want to do force the vote because the argument was, we're so many votes short, what's the point, right? Okay. Accept it or don't accept it, doesn't matter. Because one of the points AOC made is, we need to save our power and our leverage for when we have an issue where we're close. Then we'll flex our power and use our leverage. Then we'll force the vote. And what example did she give? $15 minimum wage. Well, then the $15 minimum wage fight came along, and it was part of a reconciliation bill, a must-pass reconciliation bill. And they didn't fight. In fact, Ro Khanna wrote a letter to Joe Biden that said, listen, I really want you to put that $15 minimum wage in there, and I'm telling you this is my official statement that I'm in favor of that $15 minimum wage. But if you take it out, will I vote for the bill? Probably. There it is right there. There it is right there. And that's every non-fight fight that these guys have. I sent you a letter saying I want something, and when you reject it, I'll still vote for the thing. And don't worry, we're not unified, we're not organized, we don't have solidarity, so you'll end up getting whatever you want, and Joe Manchin will end up getting whatever he wants. Ayanna Pressley is the one who was whispering in everybody's ears, the leader behind the scenes, with all the squad, a lot of the Justice Democrats. Hey, get serious. At the end of the day, you vote alone. That's the opposite of the mantra of the Tea Party, where they banded together on everything, threw their weight around, and got a lot of what they wanted. Oh, this breaks my heart, man. This breaks my heart. See, and a lot of this you could blame me because, again, I was naive enough to think if I just get people, or we try to get people in Congress who agree with us on the issues, they agree with us on Medicare for all, they agree with us on free college, they agree with us on ending the wars, they agree with us on a $15 minimum wage. If you just get people in there who agree with us, they'll figure it out. They didn't figure it out. The people weren't vetted for strategy, and the people weren't vetted for leadership qualities. And now that's coming back to bite us in the ass. They don't know dick about strategy, and none of them show leadership qualities where they're willing to stick their neck out there and get a round of negative press in the media. I would relish that fight. All you got to do is organize a handful of them, and then you got it. And then you control the narrative, and when the media comes after you, you go back at the media. Go ahead, come after me. I'm on the side of 80% of the American people with what I'm fighting for. I'm fighting for a $15 minimum wage. I'm with the majority of Americans. I'll tank this fucking bill, and I'm tanking it on behalf of the American people. The American people send their regards. You want to run negative stories about me? Go ahead. I'll stand on my own 2 feet, and I'll counter you, because I'm right. Nobody wants that negative press. Nobody wants the punishment from leadership. So here we are. Everybody votes alone, nothing gets done, and they all run back to Twitter and virtue signal all day and pretend like they're heroes. You're anything but heroes. You're cowards.